Welcome to the Scott Hunt Podcast, back after one of the more unbelievable Cougar football games that we have all witnessed in our lifetimes. The Cougars taking on West Virginia for what was a game, I think, far more memorable for a good way, also for a little bit of bad in there. I'm sure we'll unpack tonight as well. Just an unbelievable game to talk about there, in addition to I would say, a moment that made me really proud to be a Cougar fan, the Cougar turnout for the volleyball game. We're going to talk about all that as well, where that team is the still top 25 Cougar volleyball program. Entertaining Big 12 football, week to come and week that was. Guys, I have more notes about this episode than I think any that we've done this season. That is how much some of these topics intrigued me tonight. So I will take the mic no further virtually. I am Sam. I never introduced myself in these areas. I am Sam, one of the three co-hosts of this show. I'll pass it off to you, Dustin, my good friend and co-host of the show. How are you doing, friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Obviously, there were a couple results from the Saturday instead of from the actual weekend that would have loved to switch around, but got to be in person at the West Virginia game and see that whole thing, and got to be in person for the two volleyball matches and see the kinds of crowds I never thought I would see for a Houston Cougar volleyball match. So, all in all, had a great past 7 days being a Cougar fan, and excited to jump into it with y'all.
Bobby, I've seen you in person 4 of the last 6 days, so I have a good idea the answer to this question, but I will still ask it. How are you doing tonight, friend?
I enjoyed staying with you, and I enjoyed seeing you this past week. And honestly, I'd be doing a whole lot better if I was there, not here. But I am here working, getting back to the grind. But other than that, I am doing wonderful.
I was going to say, Dustin, real quick aside, that's going to be a very memorable game, but not to take a shot at our attendance, but not a large number of people are going to say I was there for that. So I will say this, as much as Bobby had this, and I had this cool weekend in Vegas, I am very jealous that I do get to say I was at the Marcus Jones Kick 6 game, but I don't get to say I was at the first Big 12 game, and to be as memorable as game as it was. Like, that's a cool thing that you and 23-ish thousand of your closest friends, just ballparking based on TV, maybe optimistically, sharing that. I think I wanted to know. I thought that was really cool, and I was thinking about that kind of afterwards. I was just like, it doesn't really take away my enjoyment, but I was just like, man, like I thought I was telling our friend Ish Nostradamus of Barry Media about, because he was there as well. Like, just like, man, I'm jealous you got to see that live.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. And I will say, like, if you saw some of the pregame fan pictures, I think it's worth noting that, like, it was a 6:00 weekday kick, and
right.
It ended up being fuller than a lot of the pictures from the beginning of the game made it look. But no, it definitely wasn't a full house. Kind of everyone's gonna have the chance to honestly say they were there. So I feel a little bit better, because I was insanely jealous of you being there for the Marcus Jones Kick 6 when I was not. But glad to have gotten back over on you.
I was gonna say, Bobby and I were at that.
Too.
Yeah, Bobby and I were at that one, but we weren't at this one. But you were at this one. So honestly, I would still say you win. And guys, you know who else is gonna win? Every single Cougar fan that has or will consider in the future getting a piece of fantastic Charlie Hustle Cougar merch. Guys, it's starting to get, I'm not going to say it's the cool season yet, but we're starting to at least get to where we can think about the cool season feasibly. It no longer is showing us 90 and 100-degree days. On our various weather apps, you can get a fantastic red or gray Charlie Hustle crew neck. I am personally an owner, I think, sitting about 10 feet away from me, waiting to be folded, the red Charlie Hustle Cougars crew neck, a real favorite of mine and my significant other as well. And of course, no matter the season, a Charlie Hustle Cougar t-shirt will look good on you as well. You're going to save 15%. You don't have to like me. You don't even have to regularly listen to me on this show. But if you're listening to me right at this moment in time, you could save 15% off your Charlie Hustle order just by using the promo code SHP15. That's SHP15 at checkout. You're going to look good. You're going to be wearing a cool, one-of-a-kind Cougar design. And you're going to feel good, I would hope, about supporting our little show. So that's Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com, promo code SHP15. Guys, completely unscripted. That is just how much I genuinely like Charlie Hustle as a partner and like the product that I have, that I wear on a semi-regular basis. I think a number of different times I've come on this show and just asked you guys, like, oh, do I have to talk about it? Are we going to have to talk about this Cougar game? And just kind of mournfully gone through I would say, semi-quick recap, because I won't give myself too much credit of the game that was, but I'm excited for you guys to try and recap Thursday night's game as quickly as possible before we talk about it in detail, if you gentlemen are ready for me to do so.
Let's
go.
So for as much as this turned into a high-scoring affair in the latter stages, when I thought back on this one, we really did kind of have a sleepy start to this one, though. Obviously, we did get some flash and excitement at points in the first half. Cougars win the toss to start and elected to take the ball first, but stalled out just inside West Virginia territory, punted in the game's opening possession. I think at least one co-host took issue with the 4th and 6th punting and positive territory decision, but on their first possession, the Mountaineers really looked like everything I think I would been worried they would be, pounding the Cougs with a really methodical offensive attack. But you saw in the red zone, the Cougars were able to get the Mountaineers off schedule, and the visitors had to settle for a field goal to go up 3-0 early on. Matthew Golden, now for the second time in 6 games this season, takes the ensuing kickoff 100 yards officially for the touchdown. I want to give some big shared credit to Golden's teammates, who I thought gave him plenty of room to work with. On the return, Mountaineers get the ball back, and thanks to a couple big timely pass plays, quickly got deep in Cougar territory, eventually finishing off the drive with a CJ Donaldson touchdown run. Mountaineers back up 10-7. And after that, the Cougars and Mountaineers would trade empty possessions for most of the second quarter. Neither team had a 3-and-out, but I thought the Cougars were really hampered early on by an out-of-rhythm looking Donovan Smith. But you also did see on the other side, West Virginia started to become a bit less effective running the ball against the Cougar defensive front. Inside of 2 minutes left, leading up to what ended up being the final first half touchdown. We also had a potential Malik Fleming punt return touchdown get nullified by a holding call on the return, but the Cougs still did get the ball in pretty good field position just on the U of H side of the 50. And for the first time in this game, actually strung together a touchdown drive, a really masterful running of the 2-minute offense by Donovan Smith and company. It was the first time Donovan Smith had really started to look in sync with his receivers. And thankfully, if you're a Cougar fan, was a sign of things to come later on. Smith would finish off this drive by calling his own number from 2 yards out. Cougs go to the locker room up 14-10 for their first ever halftime lead against a Big 12 opponent. Unfortunately, what would be a sign of things to come in the second half was how the Mountaineer offense moved the ball through the air to start. Just over 2 minutes of game time in the second half, retook the lead on a flea flicker where U of H's DBs bit hard, and Garrett Green connected with Traylon Gray for a touchdown. Mountaineers back up 17-14. Cougs really picked a bad time after that to have their first 3-and-out of the game. I think it's easy to forget with everything that happened afterwards, but West Virginia had the ball 17-14 with a chance to go up 2 scores and looking pretty promising to do so. In the second half, I think one of the clutch plays of the game, Isaiah Hamilton picks West Virginia in the end zone, gives the Cougars new life. The very first play of UH's next possession, Stacey Sneed really gave the whole team a shot in the arm with the longest run of the season, 59 yards, set the Cougars up nicely deep in West Virginia territory. And despite an early holding call on the next series, the Cougs would score 3 plays later. Smith connects with Joseph Manjack. Cougars back up 21-17. West Virginia got the ball back and held it until the early fourth quarter. Mountaineers would eventually go up via a Garrett Green goal line sneak, 24-21 Mountaineers at this point. But Cougar offense really moved quickly in the next drive. Sam Brown drew a pass interference call on a first down near midfield deep shot. Manjack had a couple nice receptions in this possession. I believe for the third time this season, the inexplicable end zone fade worked. This time with Sam Brown stretching and falling back for a nice touchdown catch, his second of the season. Cougars retake the lead 28-24. And you really saw in the next possession, the Cougar defense put you in a position to win for, I think, the only time in the second half, getting its lone 3-and-out of the game. You saw Garrett Green finally miss some open receivers, a solid Malik Fleming return in between. The Cougars got the ball with the chance to go up 2 scores. Did not disappoint, though. I thought the drive got off to an auspicious start with a very ticky-tack holding call on Patrick Paul after the Cougs got the ball on the Mountaineer side of the field, but Boogie Johnson made his presence known with a big catch on 2nd and long. 2 plays after that, Smith took an end zone shot on 2nd and short, finds Johnson, who did a nice job concentrating for his first Cougar touchdown. 35-24 Cougs, 7:28 left in the game. And West Virginia took nearly 4 minutes to cut the lead back to 1 score, but did eventually do so. Garrett Green ran it in for the second time on the night from 8 yards out. And the 2-point conversion featured a really incredible catch by Traylon Gray, the West Virginia receiver, in the back of the end zone. He tips the ball in the air as he's falling down and somehow gets on his back and catches it. It is genuinely a shame that play would probably get third billing for what happened immediately after the absolute bonker stuff of this game's close, 35-32 now. And on the next possession, I think you saw after the Cougars got a first down, get a lot more conservative in service of trying to kill the clock and force West Virginia to use It's 3 timeouts instead of trying to win the game. On the drive, the Cougars were able to get it down to 1:17 left in the game, but still gave the ball back to West Virginia's offense down 3, and the Mountaineers promptly passed through the Cougar secondary with frightening ease, getting to midfield. With over 30 seconds left, the D was able to get to 4th and 10 at midfield, but on that 4th down play, Green connected with Hudson Clement for a 50-yard touchdown. Clement just beat his man one-on-one, then ran almost untouched into the Cougar end zone. 12 seconds left. West Virginia has gone from improbably down 11 to up 4, with the Cougars basically having a return and 2 plays left to win this game. Foreshadowing. But I think it was pretty significant. We didn't really think about it at the time. Garrett Green gets an unsportsmanlike conduct for taking his helmet off in the field of play while celebrating. West Virginia has to kick the ball off a bit deeper than usual. On that ensuing kickoff, Stacey Sneed, I thought, did a really good job taking exactly the yards he had available to him while only using 5 seconds on the first play. Smith connects with Dalton Carnes, who quickly gets out of bounds, gets near midfield. Clock stops with 3 seconds left. Smith takes the snap, rolls right to escape pressure. A couple yards behind the line of scrimmage, heaves the ball just short of the end zone, where Manjack tips it into the grateful clutches of Boogie Johnson's arms. The field judge signals a touchdown. Sam Brown carries Johnson while the entire Cougar team rushes to that corner of the end zone to celebrate, joined shortly by the Cougar student section. There's some brief talk with Neil Brown about the need to attempt a PAT. Eventually, Brown just sends his team to the locker room. 41-39 final. Cougar football gets its first Big 12 win in the most absurd way possible. Dustin, since you're the one of this trio who is not in any capacity talked into a microphone yet about this game, where would you like to start with this one?
This one was so much fun. winning a Big 12 game, I can now definitively state is really fun. I mean, I grew up an Iowa State fan, so I only kind of knew about that up until this. But no, it's really fun. Being a team on Hail Mary, that's really freaking fun. Like seeing the students storm the field, beating someone who really, I mean, desperately wanted to beat you. That is just some good, clean fun.
Yep.
You can't beat that. There are a few things in life that are better than that. That's the high that makes being a sports fan worth it. Because I feel like there's way more often we come in here and we gripe about this whatever just didn't go the way we wanted. Oh, this sucks. Oh, being a Cougar fan is like this. Everything always whatever. But I mean, you can't get a whole lot better than winning a football game like that. It's so much fun. And I hope that everyone listening and or watching us right now got to experience it and got to experience fun, because I know that there are some people that were just saying after, I just don't know if I really could enjoy it because of blah blah blah. The coach, it means our coach is gonna be around for
get out of here.
What is the point of sport? What is the point of being a sports fan if not to enjoy moments like this? The only reason that you want a different coach is in the service of winning more games. We just won a game. We just won a really exciting game in a really awesome way. That's the whole point. So, I'm glad that I'm sure the majority of our fans of the program, listeners of the podcast, I'm sure we're able to get the enjoyment out of that. But, I'm really excited that the U of H players who have worked really hard got to experience it. And I'm glad that Dana got to experience it, just because, again, we don't need to talk about it right now, but I think probably all three of our opinions on his long-term viability here don't change based on this game, but I don't hate the guy. He's obviously, frustrated the same way that everybody else is about Houston losing. And I am glad for him that he got to experience that win. What he described afterwards is, going into a minute from being about as angry as I've ever been to the happiest I've been in 30 years of coaching. So that's pretty cool. So, I mean, like I said, fun isn't a word that we've got to frequently associate with Cougar football the last several years. Kind of I mentioned, all the complaining and the griping and whatnot. But that was fun as hell. And, I don't know, even if it'll likely be at least a few years, maybe more than that, before U of H is contending for a Big 12 title in football. And and I appreciate that West Virginia is not the Big 12 scalp that Houston fans most want, but beating West Virginia in a crazy fashion just feels a little bit bigger than beating even a team like Memphis that I hate in a crazy fashion, which we've done a couple times. Even if all we are for the next say 7 years of the Big 12 is just kind of someone that annoys the other teams sometimes. We spent the last 7 years not winning a title in the American. I'll take 7 years of being plain chaos agent in the Big 12 over that any day. And I'm by no means conceding that that's all that Houston can possibly do over the next, or first 7 years. in the Big 12. So I think the point
Yeah,
I
it's
made,
better to be annoying to Texas and Texas Tech than
Yeah.
Tulane and Navy.
yeah, like it just, beating ECU or Memphis on a Hail Mary is just not the same thing as beating West Virginia on a Hail Mary. It just isn't, and I guess, like I said, my ultimate point here before I pass it off is, however you feel about Houston's current head coach, don't let it take away from enjoying wins, and don't let it take away from the excitement of getting to see Houston play on the big stage that is the Big 12.
Yeah, I was, on that excitement thing, I was really glad that I was watching it with Sam, right? Really, we were both there for Kick 6. We're both there for this one together. It's kind of a we should hang out more for Cougar games. But no, it was just after the touchdown, after we gave up the touchdown to go down, we just sat in Sam's condo and we were just like, of course.
Stunned silence, I think.
Yeah, just stunned silence.
Like there wasn't
like
I don't think either of us screamed at the TV. Like maybe there might be like one fuck or something like that. But like really, like I think it was more just like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is happening.
It was the same in the section I was sitting in at the stadium too. Just like no one was yelling, no one was like, God,
it was just like, okay,
stunned silence is correct.
Just like, all right, well, this is our lot in life, and then it goes up and Sam and I just jump out of our seats. We were sitting there and we had just kind of resigned the fact that like, well, here it goes. And he kind of rolls out and you see the ball go up and you're like, all right. And then all of a sudden he comes down with it and Sam and I jump out of the seats and Sam just says, holy shit, about 15 times. And I go, what the? And his significant other, who isn't really into sports, just kind of looking around like, I guess that was kind of cool, but whatever. You guys are being a little ridiculous right now. And then just like celebrating, but then kind of watching the TV, kind of like, why do they keep showing the West Virginia coach? Like, what is happening right now? And then watching their quarterback, who had just waved bye to our fans, have to just like squat down and just, it's so good.
Shout out to whoever camera director made the decision to do a lot of Garrett Green post game shots. Like, perfect TV direction decision at a college football game of the fucking season. I'm gonna say that for half season. That is the only thing you missed by not being live, Dustin. Is copious shots of Neil Brown kind of frustratedly talking to the officials and Garrett Green just sitting in stunned silence or squatting in stunned silence, like Bobby said.
It's so good. And Neil Brown, and then them like, well, they have to kick. And then the TV announcers are kind of like, well, I think he's arguing that they have to kick a PAT. And I'm like, well, just kneel it. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? Like, stop. It's over. It's over. You're done. And just that feeling of just something we haven't had much this year of a win, and we've never had this Big 12 win. So it feels good, guys. It feels good. And then being the first of the newbies to beat an existing Big 12 team is just, and then, kind of hoping on Saturday that like deep down, we're kind of hoping that the teams who played didn't win, and then they didn't. So you're like, all right, we have the first legitimate one. All right, cool. Cool.
I was watching the Iowa State since I kind of defaulted just because I know you, Dustin. So like if Iowa State's playing someone I don't have a strong opinion about either way, I root for Iowa State. But especially it was just like, don't beat Iowa State and have a better win with us. Let's have this for this week. Because it was very much like of the three AAC schools. It's like, oh yeah, since he was in the playoff 2 years ago, UCF has all this recent history, and Houston had a good season like 8 years ago and doesn't look that great. It would just be very funny to me if when it's all said and done this year, I'm not predicting this yet, but I also don't think it's as insane of a prognostication as it would have been in like before week one, that we end up having the best team of the three AAC schools. Like, I'm not predicting it, but it doesn't feel impossible with how bad those two teams have looked. That's a good feeling. I was going to say, if you guys, it was before our time a little bit, but you've probably seen like the highlights of it, the old Wide World of Sports introduction, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. Well, we got the freaking thrill of victory and the agony of defeat in like 12 game seconds, all at once, and all in, I think, just about the most extreme ways I think you could possibly get it from a college football game. I think my first more micro thought about the game is that I think this is the most complete game the offensive unit played in the 2023 season. And I'm not going to say it was perfect, but I think even before the Hail Mary, I was comfortable saying this was the best offensive performance we've seen from the Cougs this season. Not a perfect offensive performance, but go back a week and I have no problem in admitting that when Dustin and I previewed this opponent, I was the more negative one of us. I had serious concerns about this Cougar offense being able to move the ball. This is West Virginia defense that we saw previously really go up the works against TCU and Texas Tech offenses that we saw largely move the ball at will against the Cougars. And I think even when I was envisioning optimistic scenarios of the offense and how they could do well against the Mountaineers, I don't know if I ever saw the Cougs running the ball this well. For example, the Cougs ran for almost 2 more yards per carry on average than the Mountaineers. I never would have predicted that with any kind of confidence before this game. I mean, Penn State, the current number 7 team in the country, rushed for over a yard per carry less than the Cougars did against the Mountaineers on Thursday night, excuse me. Same for TCU and Texas Tech. Stacy Snead's 58-yard run that I mentioned earlier in the first scoring drive of the second half was by far the longest allowed by the Mountaineer defense this season by a pretty wide margin, by almost double. I think the previous high was 31. I mean, I think you zoom out even further, Cougar offense finishes the day with 7.4 yards per play. You'll take that number against any Big 12 opponent, even the teams that we consider to be lesser, more winnable games before the season. And you're seeing individually guys like Matthew Golden and Joseph Manjack looking more comfortable in their new roles. Their transition from being like supporting cast underclassmen to guys like Tank Dell to being the dudes now. Sam Brown and what he's done this season, taking pressure off those guys. And now I think secondary guys like Dalton Carnes and Boogie Johnson coming up at big moments from this receiver group, taking the pressure off those two guys. And I don't believe this running game is fully realized yet, but I think you're starting to see maybe what could be the best rushing offense since Dana Holgorsen's been here, which is a low bar to clear, but I think this offense could potentially clear it. This isn't a perfect or elite offense yet, but I think compared to where we all were after week 3, after seeing how this team did against TCU guys, I don't think I foresaw even having like some of the glimmers of success we've seen in the game since then. An offense that's able to consistently do both things. And I think I'll single Donovan Smith more out later, but I think it was a really good gutsy performance from the quarterback, the kind of performance that's going to get remembered when this game gets talked about however many years later. You're finally starting to see the staff figure out how to effectively use a combination of Smith, Snead, and Parker Jenkins in the run game. You're finally seeing an offensive line that might be able to actually consistently run block, which I don't know if we've seen since before Dana Holgorsen got here. So that was my first, I think, positive point on this one. I really thought even before that Hail Mary landed that you didn't see a perfect effort. I think you saw the offense kind of, and Smith included, really not be the best version of themselves for a large portion of the first half. But I think you saw a second half where the Cougar offense did more than I think we expected against that Mountaineer defense.
Yeah, offensively, like I said, I think there was a lot to like even before the Hail Mary catch. I think with Boogie Johnson, there was a lot to like even before the Hail Mary catch. You know, I'm happy for him to get that catch, a catch I'm sure he's going to remember the rest of his life. And, you know, the start of his U of H career, the first 5 games probably weren't everything he hoped they would be, but, you know, he was already having an impactful game before the big one. And, you know, you'd love to see this game give a talented individual a springboard to playing better and better in the future. And I think, speaking of individuals you like to see use this game to springboard to play even better and better in the future, Donovan Smith, 4 TD passes, throwing, ran for another one, finished the game, completing his last 16 passes, including the Hail Mary. I got to say, so even like adding another roller coaster to like the roller coaster of emotions that was like the last 12 seconds of this game, as Sam kind of alluded to, OG friend of the podcast, Ish, tweeted before the game, you know, say, I have a feeling UH is going to win on a last-second Hail Mary. And, like, I swear, I turned to my buddy that I was sitting with, like, right as that play is going to start, and I just go, you know, my buddy tweeted before the game that, like, we're going to win on a last-second Hail Mary. And then the play starts, and he kind of gets some pressure, and he's like, and Donovan Smith is rolling out left, and I'm like, okay, well, no, like, he's not going to be, like, under some pressure. Like, there's no way he's going to, like, turn and square up his body and actually get it to the end zone. And then he does exactly that, and you go, oh, no, okay, that actually got there. And then, oh, holy hell, someone came down with that. But really, really impressed with Donovan Smith and the game that he had, especially in the second half. It's almost enough to make you wonder why we didn't try to throw the ball and play to win when we had the ball up 3 with 3 minutes to go. And but you know,
I got some thoughts on that one. Believe me, I've got some thoughts on that.
Neither here nor there. We won. But you know,
we won.
It is kind of. But I mean, you talk about how good the offense played this game, but it is. You know, we keep kind of like dancing around it, like. They didn't have an offensive touchdown until like the dying seconds of right before halftime. Like, it is wild that on the one hand, I'm excited about some of the things that we've seen from this Cougar offense. And you'd certainly have to consider the offense to be the better side of the ball right now for this team. And this is a team that's played 3 Big 12 games. And within those 3 Big 12 games, they have had 2 separate stretches of over 60 minutes worth of football, which is an entire game, which they did not score an offensive touchdown. Like that's a huge, massive red flag in terms of consistency. It's nice to play a really nice offensive half of football here and there. We did it against Rice in the second half. We did it against Sam Houston in the first half, Tech in the first half. Did it here again against West Virginia in the second half. And every time we've done it, I feel like we've come back and we're like, hey, like it seems like the offense is kind of finding itself. So, I don't know. I'm certainly happy with the way the offense performed in the second half, and even I can say broadly for the game. But yeah, I think definitely work to be done in terms of proving that this offense isn't just going to vanish for a half or two at a time again in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a fair critique. I don't know why, but I told Sam, and I can't explain this in the best way, but it felt like that drive at the end of the first half, something clicked in the offense and it didn't turn off this whole game, right? Like in the games that you mentioned, we come out, we looked good, but this really felt like something changed in the offense, and what it is or what that looked like, I can't put my finger on it, but that drive was really good heading into the end of the first half. And then it just kind of continued. It'll be interesting to see in the upcoming weeks, this week in particular, if that kind of continues, if we can put together a full 60 minutes of the offense looking good. But it really just looked different. And it continued to look different. Starting with that into first half drive. So that was kind of a big thing. And I think I may have said it in the premium instant react as well. Just like it just looked and felt a little bit different.
I think what was really impressive to me, I want to single out the way Smith ran the 2-minute offense for that first touchdown drive. I don't think we saw Clayton Tune become that comfortable running the 2-minute until the very end of his very last year in the program. And considering that Donovan Smith, that's not the first 2-minute offense kind of touchdown we've had this season. You got to consider all these guys didn't really get to know Smith until, the earlier parts of this current season. I also don't think the box score, the rushing line of 12 carries for 34 yards, I think really tells you how effectively Smith changed the game with his legs, whether that was calling his own number in the run game, or I think he did a really good job moving around the pocket, avoiding the West Virginia pass rush, kind of bailing out his offensive line there. And that's kind of been the story of Donovan Smith's career, is that you watch the game and anecdotally, like, yeah, this guy's doing stuff with his legs. This guy is able to get tough yards in the run game, but it doesn't add up to like a really impressive box score number. But, I don't know. I think at the risk of speaking for the fan base at large, there was definitely early doubts of Smith this season. It would include myself in that group, probably include both of you in that group to some degree. And I'm not going to say I'm totally bought in on this current year's version of Cougar football, but I'll say it. I'm fully bought in on Donovan Smith as a quarterback. I love his game. I understand now at least some of why the staff was so willing to turn the team over to this guy. There are still flaws with this team, though, and I think we've talked about this game plenty, and yet have not talked about the Cougar defense, which really got bailed out of a catastrophically bad fourth quarter performance in this one by Mr. Smith and by his arm more specifically. And I will say the Cougar defense did keep you early in this one. Dustin talked about you're right. The offense until the very dying moments of the second quarter was basically kind of a no-show in this game. And I did think the Cougar defense did some good stuff against the Mountaineer run game. I thought, especially after the first 2 series, that that was going to be, I think I remember walking in because I got home like 5 minutes after the game started and just seeing CJ Donaldson effortlessly shed a couple of Cougar defenders. And I was just like, oh God, this guy's gonna go off for like 230 rush yards tonight. And this game's not going to be especially close. And that didn't happen. Really, after that second series, CJ Donaldson did very little to positively affect this game for the Mountaineers. And that's a credit to the Cougar defensive front. Chidozie Nwankwo having, I think, the best game anyone in that defensive front has had this year, really changing how West Virginia had to play. I thought we saw more of David Ugwoegbu affecting the game positively for the defense that we had in previous years. Both guys, Nwankwo and Ugwoegbu, both had 2 tackles for loss. You saw, again, the Cougars changed how the Mountaineers played in the games prior. got them away from being a run first offense. The problem was when they got out of their comfort zone, they were still extremely effective moving the ball against the Cougars through the air. I'd say this was a wildly successful second half for the Mountaineers. Thankfully, the Cougar offense was equaling that on their side as well. This was West Virginia's season best passing total by almost 230 yards. Their previous season best had been 162 against Penn State in week 1. So that tells you how the Mountaineers had done throwing the ball. I think I said in the pregame that this was one of the worst passing offenses that the Cougars are going to see this year, and I feel like that was justified. I mean, maybe the rest of the season goes differently for West Virginia. Maybe they finally figure out how to throw a forward pass, but I don't know. Not super confident in that. You didn't see the Cougars really able to put much pressure on Garrett Green, even in obvious passing situations. He did a good job moving around the pocket, calling his own number in the run game here and there. And as good as the Cougar defensive front was stopping the run, I think for now the 5th time against, I think, 5 varying degrees of evenly matched opponent this year, I'm excluding Sam Houston from that. You didn't really see a consistent pass rush. The what, like Bobby was talking about the offense. Like, I don't have to come on here and explain why it's happening. That's Brian Early and Doug Belk's job. But I can say what is happening, and what is happening, or what is not happening in this case, is the Cougars getting any kind of pressure. So obviously, defensive back or poor defensive back play is a big part of it, but it's usually a team effort when you do this badly. Again, taking Isaiah Hamilton, who once again made a really big play in your defense, really needed it. Just another really bad game defending the pass, guys.
Yeah, I think you kind of took a lot of what my thoughts were here in terms of just being pleasantly surprised with how they did against the run. Holding CJ Donaldson under 4 yards per carry is obviously huge, especially as good as he looked the first couple of drives for them. But on the other hand, yeah, that pass defense is, against the guy who's been struggling mightily all year to put up nearly 400 yards. Not what you want to see, and I think at least some of that you do have to chalk up to Garrett Green. We talked about, my pitch to you, Sam, for why Houston might actually be able to slow them down a little bit in the run game, basically centered around, well, hey, Shozi Owonkwo is better than what he's shown this year. He's been banged up. Maybe this is the game he's finally 100%. And I think that's exactly what happened. I love it when the rare prediction I make actually just comes 100% true the way I want it to be. But I think we saw that a little bit with Garrett Green as well. As banged up as he's been this year, I think maybe we haven't seen the best of him in their previous games. And I think he looked like a healthier, better version of himself than what you would see if you looked at the tape of their first 5 games. And he had some of these long throws where it's just like, oh god, what are we doing? He had a couple long throws where you go, damn, that was a really good, right on the money, deep ball that he put right in the basket. So that you don't always see a lot of college quarterbacks make. So does that fully exonerate Houston's secondary and lack of pass rush in this one? No, it sure doesn't. It sure as hell doesn't excuse giving up what by all rights should have been the game-winning touchdown on 4th and 10 from the 50-yard line with 30 seconds to go. I don't know. I guess just maybe I'm feeling a little generous. I'm inclined to give the pass defense more of maybe a C- grade than an F, given that they forced a lot of incompletions. They did have the huge play in the end zone by Hamilton that you mentioned. And every once in a while you tip your cap when the other team makes a really impressive play. And I thought West Virginia looked objectively better throwing the ball than I expected them to. So, it's a C- grade, which might be one of the better grades they've gotten this year. So that's still damning with faint praise to a large extent. But I don't know. I guess I do want to say that there were some contributing factors if I'm still overall, broadly speaking, underwhelmed mightily by the defense this year, obviously.
Yeah, I think the pass defense, as you guys said, I mean, I'm not trying to, beat a dead horse here, but Garrett Green hasn't been good this year. Just straight up, he hasn't been very good. And he looked pretty good against us. I think that's a fair point, Dustin, that he's kind of been banged up and maybe he's starting to get healthy. So we're going to see a little bit more out of him. It is hard to give them a full F grade when they do have that interception. It was a nice interception, good play there. So it is kind of tough to do the full F, but I don't disagree that should have been the game-winning touchdown that they gave up. And, I think the most frustrating part of that play is, I guess I'm glad it happened because it led to the Hail Mary and we got that. But at that point, if you're going to get beat inside like that, bring him down, get the field goal, let's go to overtime. You got to at least make the tackle there if you're going to get beat like that. And look, I understand it was a tight end. They're harder to bring down. There has to be some support somewhere. that is going.
They're also slower, and he went 50 yards.
Also, it was their
Practice
redshirt
that.
freshman. It was their redshirt freshman walk-on receiver Hudson Clement. So a guy who is currently probably still paying his way to school just scorched us for 50 yards.
Yeah, like you got to at least bring him down. Like give up the completion. I get it. It happens. He makes a nice move on the. I get it. It's tough being a DB. Honestly, DB is probably the hardest position on the field to play outside of quarterback. And I would argue that maybe it's even tougher than quarterback, right? But like, you got to bring him down there. You have to make the tackle there, get the field goal, get him off, get the field goal, and let's go to overtime and see how we do. But you don't there. You give up the long play. Luckily, it gives you enough time to throw up the Hail Mary. But that play was just kind of a perfect example of what this defensive backfield has looked like all year, right? Get the interception, you get the big play, and then you give up a big play as well. And so it's just like Dustin said, I don't know if I can give him a complete F. Garrett Green threw for more than we'd probably want, but he did get the interception. So
I'm giving Isaiah Hamilton an A, and everyone else is an F, and everyone else gets an F and has to go to defensive back summer school. But no, I mean, I guess I'll eat all my veggies here also and talk about, because I'm gonna talk about something positive to end this. I promise. Like I fully co-sign what you said, Dustin, about like be positive about this game because you only have but so many football wins to experience in your life. But I mean, guys, we gotta talk about this defense on 3rd and 4th down. Like it does not get better week on week, and I think someone asked us a very good question on social media this week, and what I'd imagine that more than a few Cougar fans have is that how did this go from being a truly excellent 3rd down defense 2 seasons ago to one of the absolute worst in the country the last season and change? And we'll fully admit I'm not qualified to break down the last 18, 19 games of tape and say, oh, well, this coverage bust happened on this 3rd down. I can point to the what. It is Doug Belk and David Rowe and various other Cougar assistants' jobs to figure out the why and fix it. They're paid handsomely to do so. The numbers don't lie. This team is 120th in Division I FBS and opponent 3rd down conversion percentage. And if you take out the same Houston game, the Cougar defense is allowing opponents to convert over 51% of the time. If you take a look at only the Big 12 games, avert your eyes, over 55% of opponent 3rd down conversions. And I'm not going to, again, fully diagnose the why, but I think we have more than enough evidence to say that this Cougar defense is a chronic problem with maybe the most important down defense has. And, you know, that's something that I feel like it could be fixable. I mean, I feel like at one point, this defensive coordinator and players playing for him knew how to get stops there. But just, guys, I get more anxiety about a 3rd and 8 yards or longer from this defense than I do anything else that Cougar football does. Like that's just my observation as someone like watching the games.
Yeah, I think during this game, they showed the stat, I think it was in the first half, maybe the second, where they were like 6 of 7 or something ridiculous on 3rd down. I can't remember the exact situation.
They were 6 of 7 at one point. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah. And it showed the average yards on 3rd down was like 8.7. And it's just like, we're getting them into the position you want to get them into on 3rd down. But here we are, you get them in 3rd and 9 and you give up 13. It's just like you said, Sam, it's just kind of mind boggling. You're just like, how?
It almost feels mental.
Yeah. Just like, and again, we're not here to diagnose the how or the why, but just kind of looking at the screen. I'm not an expert. Let me say that again. Those coaches will forget more about football than I know, but maybe on 3rd and 9, you don't give 7 yards of cushion. Just watch us. We tend to play a lot of cushion and we're letting guys get first steps and they're catching the ball in space and they're making plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of gets to, I think the biggest why in terms of, why were we good on 3rd downs 2 years ago and why are we not now? Well, a lot of those 3rd and mid or longs, you're throwing the ball. Who were our cornerbacks 2 years ago? Who are our cornerbacks now? I think that you had Demarion Williams and Marcus Jones. And yeah, Isaiah Hamilton has some nice moments. I don't think he's Demarion Williams or Marcus Jones levels. And it's just no one else that Houston has had is even like a step away from being a step away from being one of those guys. So just like, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think the overall less depth on the defensive line now than we saw 2 years ago is part of it too. That, you know, when you're in these third down situations, you want to be getting some pressure and trying to make the opposing quarterback make a decision real quick. We have a lot of third downs where you know, the opposing quarterback has plenty of time to make a decision. It's just, and again, I've seen plenty of times where just even 3rd and 8, and we go, okay, we're only going to rush 3 or 4 and try to guard them and don't get any pressure. They've got all day. They find somebody. Hey, look, we brought pressure. We brought an extra guy. We brought a blitzer on this one. Doesn't get through. They still have a you know, pocket to throw out of, and they have plenty of time to pick a guy out. So it's just like, which again, I think that speaks to an overall lack of you know, Big 12 talent and depth on the defense compared to, you know, we've seen the wide receiver room bring in some real high transfers. You know, maybe Donovan Smith really is a quarterback of the future. We've gotten some really highly recruited running backs in. You know, we have not seen equivalent recruiting victories when it comes to offensive line or defense more broadly, and accordingly, you know, we aren't real good in those positions. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of it is as the saying goes, the Jimmies and Joes, and maybe more so than it is the X's and the O's.
I will say I said I would end on a happy note. It is crazy, but good kind of crazy, to go from a few Saturdays ago having the Cougar special teams be directly responsible for 2 opponent touchdowns to, I would say this past week, the Cougar special teams playing a massively important positive role in a tight win. I mean, there's obvious stuff, and we'll reiterate that Malik Fleming deserved his first career punt return touchdown. I still think this team maybe has some issues with return penalties in the current season, but there were a lot of really good subtle things outside of the awesome Matthew Golden kick return touchdown. Stacey Sneed had a nice 20-yard return. I previously mentioned I thought did a good job getting as many yards as he conceivably get while still leaving the offense enough time on that last West Virginia kickoff. I thought it was a really heady play from him. Lane Wilkins, when he was asked to, did a really good job flipping the field. Frankly, did his job as good as you could ask just about in that last punt. Pinned West Virginia at their own 12 with 1:17 left in this game. I think that should have been enough in terms of a field to give the Cougars a chance to see this one out. And we'll just also add that we, the 3 of us and all Cougar fans, are spoiled rotten at the amazing return guys we've gotten to see in the last decade or so. Tyron Carrier and his 7 career kick return touchdowns. Brandon Wilson during the Herman years, easy to forget, he was a real good one. Marquez Stevenson in the intervening years, of course, Marcus Jones up until 2 years ago, and now Matthew Golden having 2 kick return touchdowns through 6 games of his sophomore seasons. Guys, a lot of programs don't even have one guy who has been that level of good at returning the ball in their program's modern history, and I just named 5 of them. That's really cool, and I think we should appreciate that. And I would just say also, I did not predict a U of H win, but I did talk about how funny it would be to see West Virginia finally have, I'd say, their best team under Neil Brown, their most promising team under Neil Brown, whatever you want to call it, and to just watch them all collectively poo their diapers about losing their first shot at Dana Holgorsen since he left Morgantown. Oh, it was so good, guys. It was so good. If anything, I think I underestimated how funny this would be. And you know, plenty of items to critique from the performance from the Cougar football season to date, but go ask Cincy and UCF fans right now how much they would love to have their first Big 12 win. I mean, I won't be happy if this is the only Big 12 win we experience this season, but there's some relief, guys. And I think knowing that the first power conference football season in program history, in 30 years of this program's history, won't end with this team going winless in conference play. The standards are a bit higher than that, but I mean, I think after watching the way some of the previous 2 Big 12 games had went, it didn't feel impossible that this team could go 0-9. I didn't think it was the most likely outcome, but it is nice to, with a good amount of season left, be off the schneid for that first win. Hope there are more than this one win to come this season, but very happy about that, and just got a very healthy dose of enjoying West Virginia fans not enjoying that finish. I mean, again, would have preferred it to just be us going up 11 and them and that Cougar defensive back not dropping an easy pick and beating them by 3. But like to beat them by 3 scores would have been very satisfying, but it wouldn't have been nearly as painful for the opposing fan base. So in that way, I do appreciate the absolutely insane way this game finished.
Yep.
It didn't finish in the way that gives me the most hope for the future, but it did finish in the way that was the most fun at the time and the most funny at the time.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't the game we wanted, but maybe it was the game we needed, or I don't know, maybe the opposite of that. I'm not even sure, but
it's a better story than beating West Virginia by 3 scores, even if that latter scenario is probably easier in all of our hearts.
It's more memorable for sure. It's more likely that I'll be remembering this one for years and years to come than it would be if we had just gotten that pick and won by 11 or whatever. All right, guys, time for some forward reviews. I think we did some this week, so let's go ahead and jump into those. We had a couple little pairings that I liked. So we had Quentin, who said good for Dana. Quentin didn't even need his fourth word.
What efficiency.
Chuck was genuinely happy for Dana. Ish the Prognosticator had the Thursday Night Thriller, and Nestor had Thursday Night Whiplash Experience. And then Julie had Holy Toledo Hail Mary, and JP Francis Mustache had Mountain Mama Hail Mary.
Julie had, you had Holy Toledo Hail Mary, right?
Yes, I did.
I was like, Rian, I was like, wait a minute. Charlie Hustle, our good friends there, had
I was gonna use it.
Freaking game. Plus the flame emoji, because your friends the pod, we won't count the flame emoji against the words Charlie Hustle. Jay had did that really happen? Similarly, Jacob had incomplete total disbelief. Rev Cook had believe in miracles. Yes, definitely do in this case. Jeff, our good buddy Sean had happy football, reference to the Cougar soccer surprise draw up in Fort Worth at TCU that I believe he was in person for. And the last of my first group was Third Ward Coug had Case Keenum kind of stuff, which, yes, like this very much reminded me of Bobby. I think I talked about in the premium episode, like in a lot of ways, this kind of reminded me of like a 2008 to 2011-ish kind of Cougar game.
And I got Eduardo, who just said feels good to win, which I couldn't argue with that. It's such a great feeling. And friend of the pod, friend in real life, Bill, said played a complete game. So those are the two that I had that you guys hadn't already said. So those are my favorite forward reviews. What else y'all got?
I think I've got two more here also that none of us have said yet. Owen, who had my basic experience, which was fire. Oh my God. And then Renee had almost woke sun up. And I include that just to ask, how did you possibly only wake your son up? I was watching that one at the stadium, so I got to yell as much as I wanted. But even if I had been at home with anyone sleeping, I would have also been yelling very loudly. So kudos to you, Renee, for only almost waking your son up.
I have from Christopher, he had WR play was fantastic. Would very much agree with that one. Marcos had welcome back cardiac codes. For my heart's sake, I hope not, Marcos, but we'll be happy with some more wins. And
18-year-old me loved the cardiac Cougs. 34-year-old me hates the cardiac Cougs.
Bless so. And
so does my doctor.
Nate had same thing next game. And Nate, please no, my heart can't take it. And I think that is all I have. Chris had just saved Dana's bacon. So would agree with that, Chris. Yeah, I was gonna say longer term, but for this week, he is out of the podcast doghouse. And I think that's all I have in terms of reviews y'all haven't already said.
All right, let's talk the Big 12 week that was, and that started on Saturday morning with, we kind of alluded to it, Iowa State trouncing Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium 30-10. For the second week in a row, that Iowa State defense looked really, really good. You know, they didn't have the same like miraculously good run game offensively that they had last week, but the run game was at least serviceable, something that it very much hadn't been at any point prior to last week. And Rocco Becht continued to look solid at QB. So obviously a win that they're going to be thrilled with, winning by 3 scores on the road. And as for the Bearcats, remember when they were 2-0, having stomped a good FCS team and then won at Pitt, when I was feeling openly silly for my preseason skepticism of a new head coach Scott Satterfield and new quarterback Emory Jones? Well, they've since lost 4 straight games, including home games to Miami of Ohio and now Iowa State. So Emory Jones looks abysmal throwing the ball, and neither he nor the team as a whole runs nearly well enough to make up for it. So yeah, definitely a new Big 12 team from the AAC that I thought we were looking a ways up at a few weeks ago, that all of a sudden they go, no, we might be looking down at them actually.
I thought it was really impressive. I was gonna say I thought it was really impressive from this one is that it wasn't just Iowa State winning by taking the ball out of Rocco Beck's hands. I think if Iowa State's gonna be a 6-7 win bowl team, which is looking not that unrealistic right now, Rocco Beck's got to be able to do some of that, and I think he showed an ability to do it against the Bearcats in this one. And yeah, Bobby and I think we're talking about this as we watch this game with Emory Jones. Like, let's just say Emory Jones is like a true sophomore or something like that. You could deal with the limitations that he has because it's just like, okay, well, maybe he'll develop under this coach who's good at developing quarterbacks historically to some degree. And, just the things guys pick up even with iffy coaching from playing several seasons. Emory Jones is a fucking 6th-year guy. Like this team is terrible and your quarterback is going to be gone. Like at this point, if you're Cincy and you have nobody who's better than this guy who's going to concede losing this program next year, that's a really scary long-term thought outside of a season where, I think you probably, if you're a Bearcat fan, expect it to be more challenging. It's a tougher conference. I think all of us expect that to be this bad and not be like, okay, but they're building towards something. I don't see it. I think they followed up hiring one of the best coaches in the country with a guy Louisville fans couldn't wait to get rid of. And the early returns have not been fantastic.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about how, I think we were, Sam, this may have been us that
I totally imagined it, but let's go with it, Bobby.
That the gambling probe may have actually done some good for Iowa State and
Hunter Decker's never looked as good as Rocco Beck did on Saturday. Never.
Yeah, Rocco Beck looked really good, and it kind of forced their hand to move to Beck, and it looks like it's paying off for him. Oh, and I also want to just come on here and apologize and say you were right a couple of weeks ago. There you go.
Speaking of games I was right about a couple weeks ago, one of those teams is TCU, who responded very nicely by trouncing BYU at home 44-11, Bobby.
Yeah, and TCU used their backup quarterback in this game. Josh Hoover, he looked really good. He came in and he just kind of commanded the field and did everything you want your backup quarterback to do and some. We were at the sports book, so we were watching this game among 15 others. So, I wasn't honed in super tight on this TCU game, but they looked really good against a BYU team that we all thought had looked decent coming into this game. TCU has just been, they're such a weird team so far this year. It's been just a weird, they've looked really good. They've looked really bad. It's really hard to get a pulse of what they're about this year. Are they this team that's going to come out and just beat teams that they should beat and then lose to teams they shouldn't? Because they haven't done that, right? They came out and they've looked really good against some decent teams and have looked really bad against some bad teams. So just kind of a weird year in Fort Worth.
And I would say that the same kind of thing is true on BYU's end of things. This team, I know Arkansas is in great shakes in the SEC, but like to be any SEC team at their place but also score only 14 points against Sam Houston and also just look completely outmatched in this game against the Horned Frogs. And it's been kind of hard to figure out what BYU is offensively to this point. I think defensively they're a flawed group and then one's going to struggle on the road against the better offenses like I think we saw on Saturday, but I still think they have a higher ceiling. But I would just say with their offense, any rushing attack that averages 61 yards per game and just over 2 yards per carry, like BYU has this current half of the season, you're going to have real problems. I think Keaton Slovis has shown some positive stuff at quarterback, but he's not going to be good enough to overcome a really bad running game. And I think the Cougs with the U could get to 6 wins, but for all the early season bluster about how BYU looks like the most ready team for Big 12 play, they could absolutely lose these next 6 games if some things don't get fixed on that offense. I think their defense is better, but I think to be a bowl team and to be not in the very bottom group of teams in this league, BYU is going to need to get a bit more from their offense they've gotten consistently this year. And I don't think they're going to be 33 points worse every week in the Big 12, but I think the game laid bare some pretty noticeable flaws with that team.
I think TCU should really consider the possibility that just coming on and starting in replace of Chandler Morris might be magic. Like, I don't know.
Hard to argue with last year's results.
Right. Yeah, it's 2 for 2 so far.
Right. Also on Saturday, Oklahoma State continued its momentum, beating Kansas 39-32. Man, talking about just like some weird swings we've had from like the narratives of some of these Big 12 seasons. After week 4, Oklahoma State had just lost back-to-back games, getting trounced by South Alabama and then losing to Iowa State. And I was openly questioning whether or not the Cowboys would win another Big 12 or a Big 12 game at any point this year. They just beat both of the Kansas schools back-to-back to suddenly become 4-2 on the year with extremely beatable opponents coming up in West Virginia and Cincinnati. So Ollie Gordon just continues to have an incredible season, really being the type of workhorse back you just don't really see that often anymore. They just pretty much are relying on one guy for almost all their carries, and he is playing just some kind of incredible as of late. Had 168 yards on 29 carries in this one, ran for a touchdown, and then no big deal, also caught 6 passes for 116 yards and a touchdown reception as well. Was named both the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week and the Doak Walker National Running Back of the Week. And Alan Bowman even looked pretty good in this one too. Wonders never cease. Mike Gundy apparently hasn't run out of offensive magic just yet. And as for the Jayhawks, man, it just sure looks like this team stinks away from home this year. Their 3 trips to play true road games. They barely won at a Nevada Reno team that is 0-6 and looks like one of the worst teams in FBS football. They got absolutely throttled in Austin and now lose to the Cowboys here. Jason Bean still in for Jalen Daniels at quarterback for the Jayhawks. Ridiculously boomer bust on this one. Threw for 410 yards and 5 touchdowns on 34 attempts, but also got picked twice and took 4 sacks. So I was a little surprised with Jalen Daniels still out that KU threw it that often. 34 pass attempts and a few sacks compared, I should say, to only 21 rush attempts between Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw. Maybe not the ratio that they want to be doing going forward.
Yeah, best part of this game for me was cashing in that ticket at the end of the game at the sportsbook. So
yeah, I was gonna say Bobby and I both made some, but I was gonna say as Alan Bowman's biggest hater of the 3 of us, I gotta acknowledge he was really good in this one. And I thought the Oklahoma State defense did a good job changing, I think, what Kansas really wants to do. That's an offense that I think ideally, it's an offense ideally that's going to run the ball more than they pass it. Like, it's going to be an offense that runs the ball 45, 50 times a game if everything's going right. Whereas, obviously I think Bean was successful times throwing the ball, but I think it's kind of like West Virginia. I don't think that's what Kansas wants to do ideally in this offense. If they're doing it, I think the way they want to do it, it's more of a 65-35 split.
Are you the biggest? I
didn't think I was
3 of us though. I made a hilarious joke about him being a holder for Michigan in the season preview. All I'm saying is, I've been right there on the Alan Bowman train all year.
Fair enough, but Alan Bowman was quite good. I think even the biggest haters like Dustin and I can admit that one.
Also quite good Kansas State, who recovered some momentum, beating Texas Tech 38-21. Sam. Yeah,
I know this one stings for Red Raider fans, and I think it was a good demonstration of some of the Tech fan complaints that we heard during that week about Zach Kitley and that offense. I mean, Tech starting quarterback Baron Morton goes down, I believe, late first half in this one. True freshman backup Jake Strong comes in. And I do remember from the week that they played the Cougs that Strong was getting first team reps because Morton was pretty borderline health-wise. I mean, saw it in this one. But I will say Strong made a spectacular throw on Tech's last touchdown. In mid-third quarter, his receiver, Jaron Bradley, made equally fantastic catch. But after that, Strong threw 3 picks, and a couple of them were some of the worst picks I've seen in the past few seasons. Really bad stuff. And I guess that's kind of par for the course when you send a true freshman out there against a good Big 12 defense. But I think it's also questionable to ask a freshman to throw the ball 28 times in just over half of football when you have Taj Brooks, who only carried the ball 17 times and he's averaging 6 yards a rush. I mean, I think you really need to take the pressure off a true freshman in that situation. And just from watching this game live, it really seemed like the Red Raider coaching staff did the opposite of that. But on the K-State side of things, Avery Johnson, who I've mentioned previously as the Cats quarterback of the future, their highest ever rated high school quarterback by a pretty wide margin, came in on the Cats' first touchdown drive to kind of give a different look, to be a change of pace quarterback. And by the second half of this game, it had fully taken over at quarterback. One of the absolute most bonkers lines you will ever see from a college quarterback. 8 of 9 passing for 77 yards, no picks. All right, pretty normal at this point. 13 carries for 90 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. That is just absurdly efficient. Treshaun Ward and DJ Giddens also combined for a healthy 171 rushing yards as well. And I thought going into this year that K-State would try to keep Johnson at the maximum number of still redshirtable games, like 4 plus a bowl this season, and then get him to retain that red shirt, maybe going into next year as the starting quarterback. Let Will Howard largely finish out his K-State career this year. But I mean, after we saw Johnson just shred the Tech defense on Saturday, I mean, I think it's hard to make the case that Johnson shouldn't at least be a regular part of that offense. A really dynamic runner, I think more advanced than maybe you would expected freshman, even a consensus 4-star national top 100 kind of guy to be. And I know rotating quarterbacks can be awkward, and I don't think Will Howard deserves to be benched entirely. And, you know, teams now have some film on Avery Johnson, so maybe he's not as successful, but I can't see how you move Johnson back to the bench after that performance on Saturday. It was really, really good in this one.
All right. Well, I think we're over an hour in and we haven't even gotten to the UT games. Let's go ahead and keep it moving and jump in to that. I guess we're playing who is it? UT Austin.
Some SEC team.
A state college in the Texas capital, I think.
Random non-conference game against an SEC team in the middle of the season. But no, I think the Longhorns coming to town. It's, I think, the best offensive and the best defensive team that Houston has faced this year. And in neither case do I think it's particularly close. Not only that, they're going to be ticked off, having just lost to their biggest rival in dramatic fashion in their most recent game, and then having gotten a full bye week to rest up and prepare for the Cougars. They're running the ball really well with Jonathan Brooks. They're throwing the ball really well with Quinn Ewers. They've got talented havoc creators all over that defense. Even in the best case scenario where we're kind of like we're talking about and saying, hey, something did really click for the U of H offense and they're going to stay playing well heading into this game. It's still hard for me, I think, to see them being consistent enough to score enough points to keep up with whatever number the Longhorns are likely going to score on us, because it's much harder to imagine a scenario in which the defense plays real well in this one. And I think, broadly, if you're looking for like a matchups and analytically based argument for how Houston can win on Saturday, I don't have one of those.
No.
Which is,
I was ready. I was like, this guy has thought of something that I haven't, because I do not have it in many words of notes.
No. It's a shame, because I think there have been plenty of years over the past decade or so when that hasn't been the case, when one could very well put the Cougars up against the Longhorns and expect them to do well. I think it's more than a little bit annoying that our one chance to face these guys has to come in a season when they have their best team in ages and Houston has a lame duck coach whose days are numbered. But while I don't have a rational argument to be made for Houston winning this one in terms of how the matchups are going to work, I think there is more of a emotional, romantic argument, whatever you want to call it. I think everyone in Houston's locker room is going to know on Saturday that they can go out and achieve immortality with 60 minutes of football. If the Cougars find a way to beat the Longhorns, every single fan of this program is going to know every beat of this game, is going to know who made every key play in this game by heart for the rest of their lives. And when a locker room full of players knows that they have the chance to do something like that, I mean, it can backfire. It can absolutely backfire. It can be too much. It can be overwhelming. That happens a lot. But what also happens plenty of the time is it leads to people playing out of their minds for one afternoon, doing things that they may never be able to repeat again for the rest of their lives. I guess what I'm saying, guys, is we have no business beating the Longhorns on Saturday, and that is what's going to make it so unbelievably cool when we actually do it.
I want to believe, buddy. I want to believe so bad. And I think we're probably on the same page with what this Longhorn team is. I think if I had to sum it up as simply as possible, this is a tough, mean, and talented football team that that in the past decade plus has rarely, if ever, been described as tough or mean. Yep. The talent's always been there. The talent will always be there. They will always, that program, be able to select 20 to 25, however many blue chips they want to sign at the high school period. Now that portal recruiting is more of a thing, have their pick of the creme de la creme of guys who are looking for a new program, be really choosy there. That'll never be a problem with that program. I don't really know or care to prognosticate on that program's long-term ceiling under Steve Sarkisian, but I think this season, there's no question you're seeing the effect of him working under Nick Saban previously. It's a team that just doesn't beat itself, and a guy whose teams look a lot more put together than they did when he was a coach of successful, but Washington, USC teams that would always fuck up and lose like a big game, or it would be good offensively, but kind of iffy defensively. It's just a well-rounded team that plays really complimentary football. I think the scariest thing, I'm gonna be the Mr. Negative to Dustin's Mr. Positive and romantic here. Is just that I mean, I know they did a bad job finishing the drives in Red River, but the way they moved the ball on an Oklahoma defense that I would say bare minimum top 25 in the country and probably top 10 or 15 when it's all said and done, the way they moved it against them, and I'm just thinking, we don't have a top 10 or 15 defense. We had a defense that
we do not.
We had a defense that we just watched get shredded by a West Virginia quarterback who hasn't thrown for over 160 yards this year. So that was kind of the unhappy place when I finally like put all my notes together and finish my thoughts. Is just like, how am I going to talk myself into us winning this game? I mean, it's a sunk cost. I'm flying out on a plane in about 48 hours to go to Houston to go watch this game, and I'm excited to do it. But I've been trying to talk myself into it some way from a football perspective. Is there something I'm not looking at? And just, I mean, I think the line's somewhere in the low 20s right now. And I think if I was having to create a betting line on this game, that's probably where I'd have it too. So
I'm going to tell you exactly how I talked myself into picking Houston for this game, Sam. And that is, I said to myself, we're going to play these guys one time for my entire life, and I will be goddamned if I am going to pick us to lose in that one time that we play these guys in my entire lifetime. And so I backfilled the rationale from there and did probably a pretty mediocre job of it, if I'm being completely honest, but also, that's what I've got to work with. So you do your best.
Yeah, for me, like, I'll be the negative Nancy on this one, guys. I'm going to be happy if we cover. Like, a cover for me is like a win this week. Texas, like you said, Dustin, coming off that very dramatic loss, have a full week to prepare. We're coming off the high of our first Big 12 win in an emotional game against West Virginia that Dana, really, Dana wanted to win it more than he wanted to win any other game. But also, I wouldn't put it past Dana to get this team hyped up for this game, right? Like, it's like I said for the Sam Houston game. There was nothing that told me logically that we were going to do what I thought we were going to do. And damn it, we did it, guys. We're going to do it this week. Let's go. Let's go. I don't know why, but it's just one of those things where your head is telling you don't do it, but your heart is like, I mean, Dana, his team hasn't quit on him. His team fights. You come out kind of like I said, Baylor would versus them. You're hosting. It's going to be. I
hope we don't come out like Baylor did, because Baylor.
No. But what I mean
Bobby.
is, like I said, Baylor should. Going to come out. It's not going to be a hostile crowd towards Texas. I think we can all admit that there's going to be a lot of burnt orange in that stadium. But you come out, you get the ball first, you win the toss, you get the ball first, you go down, somehow you score, you get a stop, you score again, you're up 14-0. They maybe look a little shell shocked, and your team is flying high. You got the guys flying around the field. That's how you're going to do it if you're going to do it. You got to come out, you got to punch them in the mouth early, and you just got to hope that you get them a little shell-shocked and then just hold on for dear life to get the win.
I was going to say, I'm going to take issue a little bit. Like, not a hostile crowd to Texas. Yeah, there's going to be plenty of Texas fans there. That is true. Also, 3/4 of that stadium, a good 30,000 fans or so, are going to be booing that team with every fiber of their being. Like, it's going to be a hostile crowd.
I don't know if I would say 3/4 of that crowd is going to be in red.
I'd bite your hand off if for the assurances that crowd is 30,000 U of H fans.
I would.
I'm not saying it can't be, but I would be very excited about that. I'm not 100%.
I mean, the president of our alumni association is going, if you sell your tickets to the opposing fans, you're not a real Cougar fan. Like, Mike
Bidet is right on that one, by the way.
He is. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying
if you're listening to this and you sold your tickets to a UD fan, get fucked. Like, seriously, like this game of all games, you're going to sell the tickets, get fucked.
I'm not saying he's wrong. But there's a clear air about this game that there's going to be a lot of Texas fans. And if it is 3/4 filled with Cougar Red, I will be beyond excited just to see that.
But, Dustin was more right about the same, like, you and I, Bobby, thought it'd be a big crowd of Sam Houston people there, and Dustin was more right about that. So, I'm going to.
And he's there every game. I'll give it to him.
It's true. He's the one actually in the building, and we're just the fake fans living away from Houston and not watching the games. But, I mean,
Your words, not mine. You're obviously clearly correct word. Not mine.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, there's a lot of football stuff.
He doesn't disagree with what we said, but he does.
Oh yeah, they didn't
but we
protest enough.
said it.
It's fair. You know, I can look at the football stuff. I had a lot of football notes about this game. I mean, Quinn Ewers, probably very high draft pick at some point. Jonathan Brooks, who Dustin mentioned, very good running back. I really I would say not the same level of running attack as West Virginia, which is to say it is a much better running attack than West Virginia. But at least we now have a 1 game sample size of this defensive front actually making a decent opposing run game not be super effective. So maybe something there. I think the individual matchup that I have the hardest time getting my brain around is unfortunately Xavier Worthy and AD Mitchell against the Cougar secondary with Quinn Ewers. Not the best there. You could sell me on maybe Longhorns maybe not rushing as effectively or as efficiently as they have in some games. I mean, they struggled to do against Wyoming earlier this season, so it can happen. And that was their biggest question mark with Bijan Robinson being a first round pick. Not that I'm, again, wildly confident in that prediction, but the one I had the hardest time being like, this has to go successful. The past, just like holding Quinn Ewers to anything other than a lot of passing yards with a number that's larger than the touchdown column is going to be the tough part for me. And obviously their defense having their stuff together, because they've had some good offensive teams in the last like decade and change, but like their defense having their stuff together a bit more isn't filling my heart with joy either. But fully on board with you guys. Believe in the hype. I think we all have. We're not going to come back here and be like, I can't believe like if we lose this game by 2 or 3 scores, I can't believe it had to happen. We didn't see it coming. No, I mean, I think we all see how this could go badly for the Cougars. But damn it, guys, you've sold me. Let's go Cougars. Let's win this game.
Cougars.
Let's do what we do and just deliver inexplicable results and make teams that are blue bloods very, very mad, like we did for so many years in the Southwest Conference.
I'm down.
I was gonna say, I mean, just somehow grant me like Quinn Ewers like 8 or fewer yards per pass attempt. Like, give me that. I can squint and imagine us keeping their run game kind of contained. I can squint and imagine our offense staying hot and doing well. I can squint and imagine us just getting a lucky bounce or turnover here or two that we're not supposed to get just because it happens in the magnitude of the game. I can see us doing well on special teams. It's been back and forth this year, but when it's been good, it's been real damn good. So I think it's one of those games where you probably need a little bit of everything to break your way, but damn it if I don't. Just really, really want to believe that the universe is going to help us out with that.
I was gonna say, really hope Dana hasn't been holding anything back. Really hope he just empties the tank of tricks and offensive stuff he's got up in his noggin for this one. Because again, this is an offense that did more than I expected pregame last week. Maybe you see even a little more than that on Saturday afternoon. And God, you have to hope to win this game.
I was gonna say, if we don't see at least one like fake punt or kick or something we haven't seen under Dana, if we don't see at least like one trick play, if we don't see at least one fucking going for it on 4th and 6 and plus territory, like if we are not just leaving it all on the field, both from a player effort and a coaching bag of tricks standpoint, I will be extremely disappointed.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I spared the full thoughts on game management. I hope that now we have that one Big 12 one. I hope now that Dana's gotten through the West Virginia game that I would say coaches less to lose. I think shows the aggression that was something that we thought was a real selling point when he came here, and that we my kingdom for something that looks like the 2018 West Virginia win in Austin. Granted, a 2018 West Virginia win in Austin that was against a worse UT team, but just something like that where the game is still in doubt late. Would be really, really great. And hey, Donovan Smith has a win over the Longhorns in the past like 13 months. So wouldn't hate another one, Donovan.
Let's go.
Beat these fuckers.
Let's do it.
All right. I think we're going to leave it there. Big 12 week to come. We'll try to power through this real quick. 11 o'clock, Bobby, on Saturday. UCF travels to Norman to face number 6 Oklahoma.
Yeah, we get the Dylan Gabriel Bowl here. I don't think UCF has much of a chance, like you said earlier, Dustin, where we kind of thought, I can't remember who it was, that after the first 2 weeks, we were pretty impressed with them. And now we're kind of going, who was that we were talking about?
Cincinnati.
Yeah. Kind of the same with UCF. I remember saying like, oh, hey, do we have is it time, I said on this podcast, is it time for us to kind of look at UCF as a pretty decent football team? And the answer is now no. They just don't look very good. They have just lost 3 straight awful games. I don't see UCF doing much against Gabriel. I see Gabriel moving the ball pretty easily on them, and that UCF offense just hasn't looked very good. It's really going to come down to if Plumlee plays, right? If Plumlee plays, maybe this game is closer. Not that I think that they're going to win if Plumlee plays, but he's been out a while. This may be the game that he can. He was a game time decision last week, so didn't play. So you're kind of hoping that maybe he plays this week, and that helps keep it a little bit respectable. But if Plumlee doesn't play, this game could get ugly early.
I know predicting week to week results can be a little, but God, you saw what Kansas did to him 2 weeks ago. Like, this could get ugly. Sorry, only thought on this one.
Yep.
My only thought is I wonder if UCF has any scouting report on Dylan Gabriel, if they have any familiarity with him at all as a quarterback. Also at 11 o'clock, Cincinnati will be a 3-point favorite when they host Baylor. Toilet bowl of the week for sure. 2 teams not in a real great place right now. Not quite sure what to expect from this one. I think the -3 next to the hosts kind of indicates that Vegas doesn't really know what to do with this one either. I guess this is, as much as I'm shit talking Emory Jones, like this is your one opportunity. Baylor's pretty lousy defensively, so man, if you can't get it going, at least get like 5 or 6 yards per pass attempt against Baylor. Maybe I think at that point, if you're Cincinnati, it's like, okay, it's time to give literally anybody else on the roster a shot at quarterback.
Yeah, and from the Baylor side, I think it really says a lot that Baylor is a 3-point dog in this game. Like you said, Dustin, the home team getting the 3-point advantage really shows that Vegas doesn't know much about this game either. But for fun and for a little bit of research, I did go to Sikkim 365. And let me tell you guys, if you want a couple of good laughs, let me highly recommend you go to Sikkim 365 right now. Just a couple of things of note about this game and other things that are going on in the Baylor program. They're predicting Cincy to blow them out by like 30. Okay. Clearly they haven't watched any Cincinnati football this year.
The last thing they watched was the team that went to the playoff, I think.
But it's not Baylor's fault. It's been a bunch of woke decisions from above that have sunk their program. And yeah, that's a good one. We have people at Baylor emailing the AD because the team picked up they only had a mere 17 yards rushing in Saturday's game. To which Mac Rhodes was like, yeah, dude, I was there too, was basically his response. And it's so good just to see it. And then he was mad. Here's the quote that got me. I saved it so that I could find it and pull it up here. The AD responds back and tells him like, hey, we know we're not doing well. We're not happy about this either. And he said one other thing, Baylor alums included, or he says one thing, people, Baylor alums included, are pressed for time constantly. I'm having to take a break from my work as a record dealer to write this email. And let me tell you guys, hilarious. Okay. That he then took the time. He's so busy that he's taking time to write the AD during his workday, and he's going to complain that he has to do it. But he's not so busy that he can't post this on Sikkim 365
about his email to
the AD. So just things are going well in Waco. Somebody said that Drayton McClain may not be donating anymore. The McClain family, I don't know if Drayton's still alive, because he may still be mad that Coach Art Briles was cut loose. So yeah, woke decisions. We're taking up too much time from their alumni, and the reason why they can't buy out their coach is because their biggest donor is still mad that Art Briles was cut loose. So it could be worse, guys. It could be worse.
I think we all know that what did Art Briles in was
wokeness.
Not anything he did, just wokeism.
Oh, yep. I will say that there was a comment too under that said win at all costs, and I was like, that's very Baylor.
I do wonder a little bit if Mac Rhodes is looking at Houston like, I could have been in the Big 12 eventually,
anyways,
and I wouldn't have had to deal with these clowns.
I mean, I won't. This isn't the Mac Rhodes podcast here, but I still get like he's like, I know Mizzou has their own challenges in the SEC, but like decided like, you know what, like Baylor, that's the situation. I just really got to get myself involved. It's got, I mean, he's had women's national title, men's national title, so it's not all bad for Mac Rhodes, but
Yep.
probably hasn't been his favorite football season.
Sorry,
right.
I know that had nothing to do with the game, but I had to tell you what I found in my research. So I was trying to see if their quarterback was going to play. So
getting us back to Big 12 football. At 2:30, Oklahoma State will be at West Virginia, another game in which the home team is like a 3.5-point favorite, which is, I think, once again, Vegas shrugging their shoulders and going, I don't know what to do with either of these teams anymore. They've both been kind of all over the map. I think as much as West Virginia fans are just like, I think this is, I haven't checked their message boards, but I would imagine it might be a similar situation to what Baylor's going through, where there's like, we're probably going to lose by 100 in a game that Vegas sees as basically a toss-up because they're just so down in their program right now. And I mean, and maybe they're right, because Oklahoma State, like I said, the last 2 weeks has looked awfully impressive. But, I don't know. 2 weeks ago, I was ready to write them off. So 2 weeks later, I'm not going to just completely anoint them. But all I know is that somehow after this game, one of these teams, Oklahoma State or West Virginia, is going to be 5-2. And doesn't feel like either of these teams maybe should be 5-2.
No, I think really interesting game for both teams involved. West Virginia side, I think it's obvious that they're not feeling great after losing to U of H in a pretty painful way. And I think curious to see whether Garrett Green throwing for all those yards against U of H was indicative of a passing offense with some future potential, or, maybe just one bad game against against a bad defense, one good game against a bad defense. And I think I'm really curious to see whether OSU can successfully run the ball with Ollie Gordon. They've done a really good job at the last couple of games. Can they do it against the Mountaineer defensive front that I think has looked good for much of the season? Luckily for West Virginia, the game's in Morgantown, because I think this would have been a really tough bounce back spot. They're having to go to Stillwater, but I think just in terms of figuring out teams in this conference, this is the one I'm most curious about from this, because there's just so little seemingly separating the non-departing SEC schools in this conference in terms of week-to-week results.
Yeah, you guys have pretty much said it all when it comes to this one. It's, with it being in Morgantown, you got to think West Virginia is going to come out after that bad loss, but Oklahoma State has looked better. Not that they've looked necessarily like world beaters, but like Dustin said, one of them being 5-2 is mind blowing when you really think about it.
All right, and then Bobby, we can stick with you here, because at 6:00, Kansas State is hosting your beloved TCU Horned Frogs.
Oh, are they my beloved?
They are. That's why you can't imagine them losing to Iowa State, is because you love them so much.
K-State versus TCU. TCU, like I said earlier, just a very weird team. But we're gonna see if Hoover can do it again for a second week. If he can, it's gonna bode well for the Frogs. The game taking place in the Little Apple is definitely a benefit. ESPN has this one as a big time K-State win. The line's at 6.5. That feels probably about right with how K-State has looked throughout the year. TCU, like I said, looked good, looked bad. You don't really know what to do with them. K-State has looked pretty good throughout this year, except for the loss maybe to Oklahoma State, but like we said, Oklahoma State's looked better. So the 6.5 feels right to me. That feels like about the number that it should be.
Fascinating on the K-State side to see how much Will Howard plays versus Avery Johnson. I think the K-State offense versus TCU defense matchups could be a really good one. I mean, for as rough of a start as they had that Colorado game, I mean, go look at most of TCU's Big 12 games. I'm not saying their defense has been perfect every game, but I would say the defense hasn't been the biggest culprit in their worst losses this year. And, shutting down the BYU offense in a way nobody expected to, I think, at least going into that game. K-State's defense, I think that's going to be a true welcome to big boy football for Josh Hoover in this one. He looked good against BYU. Can you continue? I know they've fallen off a bit from last season, but I don't think K-State is anything other than above average Big 12 defense. I would say in terms of watchability and football aesthetic, this is probably my favorite one of this week's Big 12 slate.
Yeah. And then also at 6:00, Sam, I believe two of your teams face off as BYU hosts Texas Tech.
They sure do. Two teams really in need of a palate cleanser. BYU off that butt kicking in Fort Worth, Texas Tech losing at home to K-State, losing their starting quarterback. And I think from this game, the matchup that interests me the most is the Red Raider offense, who now has a full week to game plan around their new quarterback, Jake Strong. But I think also starting your quarterback who started the year as a third string on the road against BYU, who's going to have a good crowd pretty consistently in Provo. Guy who's not a proven commodity yet. Not the most ideal thing. And I don't know if I'm super confident in any result. I think I would lean Tech just because of how one-dimensional the BYU offense has been. But, I don't think the Red Raider fans are wildly confident in that secondary. But I also think it's a situation where a pretty deep defensive front can make a really one-dimensional BYU offense even more one-dimensional. Maybe I'm selling Keaton Slovis and the Cougs a bit short here. I think they'll do some good things in the passing game. I don't think it'll be a Tech blowout, but I mean, look at the teams who have had at least some success against the Red Raiders: Oregon, K-State, Wyoming, even for a half U of H. Those teams all at least mixed in the run and the pass. Like, I don't think you could go one-dimensional against this Red Raider defense and accomplish anything. That's why I think the Red Raiders will pull it out in Provo, but obviously true freshman quarterback, not wildly confident in what they can do.
All right, well, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk some Cougar men's basketball in the offseason. Less than a month to go until the season started. A couple of interesting news items we'll power through real quick before we get back to the in-season sports here. But it starts with Cougar men's hoops getting a commitment from Chase McCarty this week. McCarty about to enter his senior season at IMG Academy in Florida, so we'll see him suiting up in red and white next year. I've seen McCarty listed 6'5" and 6'6", small forward, currently the number 73 player at any position in the 2024 class in the 247 composite, consensus 4-star. Chose U of H over his other finalists, Kansas, Tennessee, Texas Tech, and Georgia Tech. So it took over 2 years after landing its first commitment in the 2024 class in Mercy Miller, but Houston finally gets its second in Chase McCarty, and now has two guys who are top 100 consensus 4-star recruits, guys.
Is that good?
That's pretty good. You beat
Not
Kansas.
bad. It's what you'd prefer.
Basketball, but it's pretty good.
Okay. I was just curious.
I would say the only thing I have to add that Dustin hasn't said, U of H is getting big time recruits, but I think it's clear isn't compromising on guys that fit this program's culture, on bringing guys into a tough, demanding program, even now with a different level of high school recruits seriously considering the Cougs. I think that's the through line to 5-6 years ago. This is still the same culture that Rob Gray, Galen Robinson, Corey Davis and company played with in the program, but you can now see that culture with a roster full of guys with a bit higher recruiting pedigree, which is never bad. Everything I read about McCarty seemed to scream Kelvin Sampson player. So yeah, really exciting pickup there for Cougar men's basketball.
Yeah, the only thing I saw was McCarty. Some of the scouts were saying that, some of the recruiting analyst scouts were saying that maybe he struggles a little bit on defense than some others. And I can't think of a better program to come to if you struggle a little bit on defense.
Yeah, it's that's something that is going to get fixed, or you're not going to see the court. Those are
exactly
those are the two options. Yeah, if you're thinking with Miller and McCarty on board, the only thing that could make the 2024 class any better would be maybe a little bit of size. Houston is a finalist for Derek Queen, a 5-star center from Montverde, Florida, number 17 in the 247 composite, as well as Nicholas Cody, 6'9" forward from Carrollton, the consensus top player in Texas, number 51 player overall in the 247 composite. Cody reportedly set to announce his commitment on November 2nd. Haven't seen a commit date from Queen yet. So we'll see if this 24 class can go from being really exciting to insanely exciting, which I think we would be qualifying them as with one of those two guys.
Yep.
Also wanted to mention with the Cougar men's hoops team real quick that all kinds of preseason polls and rankings and whatnot have come out in this past week. Houston was picked second in the Big 12 preseason coaches poll with 2 first-place votes. You can never vote for your own team, but that does mean that
shout out Bill Self and whoever else voted.
In addition to Bill Self, at least one other coach did vote. One coach who did not have to picked U of H ahead of Kansas. So that's very interesting there. Houston, number 3 in the Ken Pom preseason projections that we are always paying a lot of attention to. You'll hear us mention Ken Pom a lot once basketball season comes around. Also number 6 in the coaches poll, number 7 in the AP poll. So do just love seeing it. Obviously it's preseason, so you can only make so much out of it. But if they're going to do preseason polls, I'd just as soon see Houston ranked really, really high, which is it's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't beat winning a game, doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's a whole lot more fun to have those little numbers next to your name and the various projections and polls.
Yep.
All right, getting back to some in-season sports, Cougar volleyball with a tough weekend, dropped a pair of matches to the Longhorns at the Fertitta Center. Overall, was really impressed with how well Houston played, was really impressed with the atmosphere at the Fertitta Center. Obviously would have loved the team to do a little bit better, but not a bad showing, I don't think, by any means. And yeah, just sellout crowds, both matches, Saturday and Sunday. Over 7,000 tickets sold to each match, excuse me. Houston set a school record for any home women's sporting event in any sport with these 7K plus crowds, which were just so much fun. I mean, and just like gates open an hour early and just like long lines of people waiting to get in with the gates. I mean, just from all three of us, I know, started watching Cougar volleyball when they were playing games off in the Athletics Alumni Center in front of just, tens of fans. To go from that to just like people, just massive crowds waiting, pushing to get into the Fertitta Center, to this gorgeous arena to watch us play the defending national champions and play them good, like give them a tough time of it at times, is just really was a cool thing to experience. Obviously, would have been even cooler with a win, but nonetheless, just really exciting experience, and hopefully some of it brings a lot of fans back to the Fertitta Center for the rest of the year. But in terms of the on-the-court stuff on Saturday, Houston fell behind early in the first set, finished strong, but just had too far to go to catch up. Second set came out playing unstoppable offensively, 18 kills, just 2 attacking errors and 41 attempts in that second set. Started the set strong, closed it strong. The Longhorns actually had a 10-4 run smack dab in the middle of the set. But before and after that 10-4 run, Houston outscored them 21-7. And ended up comfortably taking the second set to tie it up. And then the third set was the one that really got away, was competitive the whole way. Houston actually led 23-21, but then gave up the following 4 points to drop the set. And when you've played 3 sets against Texas, you've actually scored more points than Texas in 3 sets, but only have one of the 3 sets to show for it. That's when you've kind of let your opportunity slip by. And unfortunately, in the 4th set, UT Austin just kind of broke Houston down. Offensively, the Cougars never really were able to slow this Longhorn offense down, mostly for much of the weekend. But that 4th set on Saturday especially got away from them. That was kind of that. And then on Sunday, Houston came out on national TV, played about as sloppy a first set as we've seen from them in recent years. Just one of those nothing goes right sets that ended up being a 25-10 winner for the Longhorns. But to Houston's credit, they were very much in the next 2 sets. The rest of the match did not let another one just get away from them. Second set was close most of the way. The Longhorns did kind of go on a run late to win at 25-19. And then the third set, the damn third set for the second match in a row, was an absolute heartbreaker. Houston led it 22-20, but gave up 5 of the next 6 points to drop the set and the match. So, tough weekend, guys. Would have loved to get a win, but, just seeing... I was thinking, comparing it to like last year when we played the Longhorns on the road, we played one of the titans of the sport and didn't blink. And I think that was true last year too. We saw Houston win a set against this Longhorn team last year. But I mean, I remember watching that match and being like, we won the set, but it just never really felt like we were a threat to win the match. On Saturday, at the very least, it felt like Houston was right there. It felt like it was within their grasp. It felt like if they just got a couple more points in set 3, at the very least, you're going to set 5, which is just a coin flip and can go anyway. So, I think facing teams like BYU and now UT Austin, I think especially has shown Houston what they have to do to get to that next level. We've seen this program already achieve so many new levels under David Rare. But that next level is, I think maybe a little more overall team size of the net and just finishing out some of those sets, even against elite competition when you get a chance. But nonetheless, like I said, just what an incredible weekend of volleyball, both in terms of, seeing the Cougs go toe-to-toe with one of the titans of the sport, and also just seeing a completely unheard of triple the crowd we've ever had for a volleyball match. Unbelievable atmosphere at the Fertitta Center as well.
Yeah, it looked awesome on TV, sounded great on TV. In terms of the on-court action, like you said, it did feel a little bit different than last year, but I would also say, to kind of counter that, that Texas team last year was a much better team, right? But definitely felt like we at least belong on the court with them. And Sam and I were watching this, and I kind of told him, I said, we look like a team that could sneak into the Sweet 16 again this year. Sneak into the Elite Eight, like if we're feeling if we get some good breaks, that kind of stuff. Texas feels like a team that can sneak into the national championship, right? Like, and that's just a different level of talent. That's a different level of performance, right? And it feels like this team may have been a year early last year. Like Sweet 16, it kind of just felt like, let's make the tournament this year, see what happens. And then we make the Sweet 16 and it's like, oh, what's the next step from the Sweet 16? And it just feels like this year was our Sweet 16 year. This is the year that we go to the Sweet 16. So it's kind of trying to take that and not go over the top and get too excited or even disappointed that you're getting swept by a team like the Longhorns or something like that. You are in a spot that you have never really been before. You look like a team that could sneak into the Sweet 16 still.
I just want to say I'm very proud to be part of a fan base with people like you, Dustin, and every other Cougar fan who was at the Fertitta Center on Saturday and Sunday, because I'm sure it would have been a way above average crowd regardless of what the current state of Cougar volleyball was, but we wouldn't have seen anything close to what we saw on Saturday and Sunday if this program hadn't shown itself to be a high level one this past season and this current one. And you see the shots at the Cougs football attendance from people looking to take shots at this athletic program. And I think this weekend shows you the kind of support and commitment this fan base will give you if you show an ability to win. And, important on the football side, not treat your fan base like antagonists. Looked like a great atmosphere on television, an atmosphere I fully expect we'll see replicated on a smaller scale for other big matches later in the current season and coming ones. Wish we could have taken one of those matches, but I would say in no way was this weekend a bust. Obviously, the toughest thing was that third set on Saturday, though. I mean, I'm not saying the Cougars take the third set and guaranteed win the match on Saturday. I mean, this is a Longhorn team, I think, still playing at a top 5 level, even if they're a bit down from the previous season. I think that says more about the previous season than this one. But at that point, you would have gotten them down 2-1, and you wanted how they respond to that. And just unfortunately just couldn't close that set out. On the Longhorns, like you, Dustin, it just really couldn't have been a worse first set. I think you looked at, but I really admired this group's grit to come back in this one. Just you're not going to have much success really if you're any volleyball team facing Madison Skinner the way she was playing on Sunday, and the UT team. I think that just, you referenced it kind of in passing, but the level of athlete they have at the net. And that was something I kind of noticed when we played Stanford last year, as well as just kind of a whole other level than what you're saying. I saw BYU be quite good, but I think you saw the teamwork that BYU had with just another magnitude of athlete in the Longhorn program.
Yep.
So despite just a 9-7 overall record, 2-5 conference record, Houston stays in the top 25 this week, dropping just one spot to number 22. And that speaks to the insane strength of schedule that Houston has faced this year, some of the good teams that they've beaten. And it also speaks to the fact that there's a lot of season left to be played. And there are a lot of matches where this team will be favorite the rest of the way, making the NCAA tournament, trying to get be a threat and get to the Sweet 16 again, very much still on the table like we talked about. So, don't freak out about the record. This is a really good team. See how the rest of the season plays out. We're at a really interesting crossroads because Houston has 11 matches remaining against 8 different teams. Of those 11 matches, 5 of them are at home, and all 5 of those home matches are against teams that are some level of good, but none of them are ranked ahead of you. And then you have 5 road matches against teams who are all not good matches. You should win all 5 of those, even with them being on the road. And then you play Baylor away, and Baylor is one spot ahead of you in the current top 25. So, like I mentioned, I think I would kind of mention this last week, like Houston is probably the quote unquote favorite in 10 of their 11 remaining matches. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win 10 of them, but it sure does mean that there is a lot of season left to be played. And that starts this weekend when the Cougars will be up in Lubbock to take on Texas Tech. These are 2 of the matches that are away to a team that you should beat. The Red Raiders are 1-7 in Big 12 play, having lost 7, including 5 sweeps in a row, or 7 in a row. 5 of those were sweeps, I should say, after stunning Kansas in their conference opener. And, I think you could certainly point out that they've faced a lot of the really top teams in the Big 12 this far. They haven't gotten their shot at the Cincinnatis and the West Virginias and the Oklahomas of the world, but they, also lost to 3 teams in non-conference play that are 100 and plus in the RPI. So, after Houston's defense struggled with the Longhorns all weekend, I'm excited to see them going against a Tech team that's hitting 169 on the year. Definitely should have a little more success there. So, like I said, I think 2 matches that Houston should win this weekend, even if you're facing a Tech team that is 7-3 at home this year.
We'll say they took top 10 BYU to 5 sets in Provo. I think that's reasonably impressive in the most recent weekend. But yeah, I noticed that, like you, Dustin, not hitting great for the season, which is just such a welcome relief from playing the Longhorns and just that frighteningly efficient offense. But we'll note they're also holding opponents to hitting 206 for the current season, an extremely respectable number. I want to single out one individual, true freshman Kate Hansen, who has an incredible 20 solo blocks on the current season. That's real good. I am no volleyball expert, but that is, in my opinion, real good. But would kind of concur with what you're saying, Dustin. This should be 2 Cougar wins if this team expects to remain in the top 25 by this time next week.
Absolutely.
All right, so keeping it going, Cougar soccer had a pair of interesting matches this past week, having a 2-2 tie with TCU before losing pretty badly to the Longhorns at home. I'll start with the more positive result on Thursday. As the Cougar football program was stunning West Virginia, Cougar soccer was stunning the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU entered that match number 21 in the rankings. They had thrashed Houston's best team in program history 2 years ago, and they jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the first half, while not allowing a single first half shot of any kind from the Cougars. And I'll admit, I completely switched this game off at this point, stopped paying any attention, was fully focused on West Virginia. But while I had completely switched off, freshman Ariana Jemison had other ideas. In the 68th minute, made a great play to win a ball in the box off of a long distance free kick, and then turned around and buried it in the net to get Houston on the board. And then just 6 minutes and change after that, TCU gave Jemison just a little sliver of daylight from outside the box and well off frame outright. And Jemison took advantage, took frankly an audacious shot that didn't look like a real high quality, high percentage shot, but curled just over the TCU goalkeeper, just off the underside of the bar, into the net to tie it up. And despite furious pressure from TCU down the stretch, who totaled 17 shots in the second half, Houston held on and got the 2-2 draw to earn a shocking road point. And I think, frankly, one of the best results, certainly of the Jaime Frias era and probably of Houston program history, if we're being honest.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add, Alexis Folks had a really nice ball into Jemison on that first goal off a free kick from pretty good distance out. So I want to mention that too. And Olivia Dietrich saving 5 shots in the final 16 plus minutes of action after the Cougars tied it up to get the draw. Extremely valuable. And I think important to that happy surprise result against the Horned Frogs. Up and forward, incredible display of efficiency. Those 2 Jemison shots, your only shots on target, and to manage to get a result out of that, I think pretty cool stuff. Wish I had a better game to talk about immediately after it, but I won't let that totally sour. What was it? A good result, one that keeps the Cougars alive potentially for the conference postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. It was we were watching the game, and I just mentioned to Sam, like, oh, it's 2-0, we're down. And he was like, oh yeah, well, okay. And then we hit him with the other update, and he's like, wait, what? Because and it really feels nice to be able to flip the script on being down early and not quitting and really going after it. So
yeah, different script than how the Cougars played with some leads this year, unfortunately, for those games.
Yeah, unfortunately, Houston, like we've alluded to, was not playing at quite such a high level on Sunday. Although they went from going on the road to playing at home, and they went from playing a team in the top 25 to one just outside of the top 25. You'd think that'd make things a little bit easier, but no, it did not. They had a hard time with the Longhorns. This one got well and truly away from them. They gave up 2 goals before 6 minutes had elapsed in the game, then 2 more in the first half, then 2 more in the second half before Nadia Kamasaw finally got one in the closing minutes to help Houston preserve, I guess, a shred of dignity maybe. But really frustrating match. Frustrating anytime you lose to the Longhorns in any sport. Frustrating B, because 6-1 is an embarrassing scoreline for a team who, as much as we're not real thrilled with how the season has gone on a whole, they have mostly avoided any really embarrassing scores. 6-1,
even the Tech game wasn't 3-0 until it was very late. The Cougars were, I think, more competitive, especially looking at how good the Red Raiders have been in hindsight. Cougars were shockingly competitive. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's frustrating because the secondary stats don't even really paint the picture of a blowout. the Longhorns only led by like a couple, led Houston in like shots or shots on goal and corners in this one. And D, it's frustrating because Houston had a chance with even like maybe another draw to really play themselves into a clear shot at a Big 12 tournament berth. But yeah, like kind of like I said, it's just as exciting as the Thursday result was, as rough as things went on Sunday, it kind of makes it hard to really be positive about the week as a whole.
And I mean, if you want to compare across sports, this Longhorn team is a probable NCAA team, but this isn't a top 5 or 10 team like Longhorn volleyball that just came through, or like the football program we're about to go see on Saturday. I mean, they just lost a 2-0 to Oklahoma in the game prior. Maybe that wasn't an ideal spot to get them off of a rivalry loss, but I think it illustrates a team that it's not like, oh, what are you going to do? Like that's a really good team. No, I think I expected this game to be at least within 1 or 2 goals and just emphatically did not deliver. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is it bad to face the Longhorns immediately after they lose to Oklahoma? Damn it.
I was just about to say the same
I
thing.
honestly didn't even think about that before I opened my mouth, but hope the football don't have similar results.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, last week I said that what I wanted to see from Houston this week was for them to score at least 1 goal. They did it in both games. They scored 3 total.
There you go. Boom.
And for them to still be alive to make the Big 12 tournament heading into their final match. And they technically are. They did both of those things. They scored 3. And there's a chance, a not great, but not inconceivable chance that Houston could sneak into the Big 12 tournament. As a quick refresher, 10 of the 14 teams in the conference qualify. Houston currently 12th with just 7 points from 2 wins and a draw from 9 league matches. Cincinnati in 10th place with 10, Iowa State in 11th place with 9. So I went ahead and did the legwork for you. Houston would win a 2-way tiebreaker with Cincinnati and or a 3-way tiebreaker with Cincinnati and Iowa State. So that means that Houston needs to beat Baylor in their final regular season game, which will be on Monday. Also on Monday, Cincinnati will have to lose to West Virginia, who is 6 points ahead of them in the standings. They're on the road at West Virginia, so that seems like it has at least a decent chance of happening. And then they need Iowa State to lose or draw, and they are hosting first place Texas Tech. So, I don't think any of those 3 results that Houston needs to happen are completely inconceivable. So
yep.
It's nice having it within reach. I then did have to also look the other way, though. If Houston loses on Monday, 13th place Kansas State faces last place Kansas, and they would catch Houston on points with a win and have the tiebreaker because they beat Houston. So with 1 match to go, anything from 10th to 13th place in reach for the Cougs. And they'll have to try to do their own help themselves by beating the Bears on Monday. Baylor 3-4-2 in Big 12 play, which puts them in 8th place. As of right now, they actually, all 4 of their losses are to all 4 of the teams who are at least receiving votes in the current top 25 from the Big 12. That's Tech, BYU, TCU, and UT Austin. Against everybody else, they have 3 wins and 2 ties, including an impressive 2-1 win in Orlando over UCF. Certainly their most impressive conference game. But I guess if you're looking for optimism, their last 2 matches, a 2-2 draw at home to a Cincinnati team that isn't all that good, and then a 1-0 loss to the Horned Frogs. So I don't know. I don't want to get too up for getting my hopes too up on this team sneaking into the Big 12 tournament and then in all likelihood, lasting 1 match at most. But, it would be nice. It would be nice to be one of the 10 teams, and at least kind of like we said with football, you don't want to go into next season with 0 Big 12 wins. You don't want to go into next season with 0 Big 12 tournament appearances.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was more optimistic before I saw UCF had a 5-match unbeaten streak before playing TCU. Again, could happen, but gotta believe it when I see it from this team being competitive with anything other than the lower. I mean, I guess West Virginia is a middle of the pack team in this conference. The Cougars beat them, so let's do it, fella. Let's talk myself into another sporting.
Let's go, baby.
And again, it would guarantee my preseason prediction of under 2.5 conference wins is wrong, and I would love nothing more to guarantee an 0-1 start to my bold predictions.
Yes, sir.
Guys, real quick, can we just cut golf corner? I'm fucking starving. It's almost 8 p.m.
Yeah,
I know it's almost 10 p.m., but I haven't eaten dinner
yet.
Yep,
sounds
fat.
good.
I'm fat. All right.
Did you say I'm fat?
Yes, I did. I said fat. I'm fat, Bobby. What the fuck?
All right, let me read. I just loved how you mumbled it under your breath. You're like, I'm fat. I'm sorry.
Didn't think about it before it exit my mouth. Yeah.
Go.
The best ones are the ones you don't expect.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. We'll definitely get back to Bobby's Golf Corner eventually. But as we are almost 2 hours into this episode, we're going to go ahead and call it a night. So on our way out, always want to mention that if you want to support the work that we do here at the Scott and Holman podcast on a weekly basis, we would love for you to go to patreon.com/SH podcast, where for $5 a month, you can be a patron, you can get access to bonus content, and you can very tangibly show us that you appreciate the work that we're doing here week in and week out to bring you more Cougar content. You can also support us leaving us a 5-star review in your app of choice. You can show us some support by showing some love to our friends, the 1012 Network, and you can support us by going to charliehustle.com and using promo code SHP15 at checkout. If you just want to say hi, you can always email us shpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at shpodcast. So if you made it all the way to the end of this marathon episode, you are an absolute rock star. And as always,
Go Cougs.